up, everybody? So we're back out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we are finishing this build right here. So this is the 5160 knife that we forged out of a scrap piece of 5160 that I had practiced on whenever I first started forging and was deciding whether I wanted to try and forge handle profiles and stuff like that. So I practiced on that piece of steel, and then it just kind of got put on the workbench for the longest time, and I decided, you know what, it's time to go ahead and turn that into a knife, and that's how this profile came into existence. Now, in this episode, we need to go ahead and take these Juma scales. I just got these from Blade Show 2022, the Texas Blade Show, and I originally was going to put a different type of scales on here, but whenever I got these, I thought this would be the perfect knife. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, is that really going to make sense aesthetically? We'll find out. I think it will. In my head, with some black micarta pins, I think that it will be a nice striking color combo and everything, so we're going to see how it goes. Now, in this episode, we're going to attach the scales. We're going to shape the scales. We're going to put an edge on this knife, call it done. Hopefully y'all are excited about that. Guys, let's go ahead. Let's jump into this thing, and let's get this thing knocked out. So y'all see me do this a few different times. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I did in this process. So of course, taped off the blade just to make it to where I have a less risk to mess up the finish on the blade because it is already finished. And then I went ahead and taped the scales together, kind of makes a little book here. That way I know exactly where they are, that they're lined up perfectly, and as I start cutting things out and drilling holes and all that, I know that we're in the right, spacing for everything. Now, when it comes down to these particular scales, I want to go ahead and actually drop the front down around this jimping right here. So I drew the outline. That's this little area right here. So put it on there, draw the outline. The reason why that's important is it lets you have a reference to keep putting back to as you start adjusting things, like where the end of the scales are going to meet the ricasso area. So for me, I wanted to drop the front of the scales down a little bit so that it's below that jimping area and then comes down. I don't want the jimping to be part of the scales themselves. So we're going to bring this down just like this. And then I matched up this area with the plunge line right here so that it looks nice and even going up and then scoops back underneath the jimping, which is in this area and ends at that line right there. So it's just using the marker for reference lines, making sure you get all this stuff on here before you clamp it up and before you start drilling the holes so that you can get things lined out like where you want the area on the scales to pop. Now of course I wanted all this area to show as much as possible, so I put it on the bigger area. Same thing with this side. And then it's going to come all the way up through the front. But I think this is going to look the best, so that's what we're going to do. We just need to get this attached to here with a clamp and then get our holes drilled so that we can put our pins in there and start cutting off the excess and get these things attached. all I'm going to be using is 500 grit. So I'm going straight from that 50 grit belt that we just used straight into 500 grit. And I bet that this takes almost no time to get looking good. So the whole point here is just to go through and lightly coat everything. You don't need to go crazy on the epoxy, because if you do, it's just all going to squeeze out. You just want to make sure you get some in the holes for the pins so that you get a nice bond inside there, and then coat the scales. So at this point, we just need to go ahead, grind off our pins, kind of square up everything, get all this stuff ground back to the actual steel. There's not much excess to actually grind off, so it shouldn't take that long. But we're going to get the pins shaved down, get all the excess shaved down, and then we're going to start profiling it. We're going to do a real subtle profile on this, nothing too crazy, no Coke bottle or anything like that. Might do a little bit of contouring in this little area here, but really it's just going to be nice, sleek, kind of ovalish, and super chill. We're going to be using a 50 grit belt here to do all of this. We don't need to use a 36 grit because this stuff actually shaves pretty easily and grinds real easily. It does create a ton of dust, just as if you were working with like micarta or something like that, or G10. But other than that, I think it's going to be pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and get to profiling. So what we're going to be doing is, of course, hand sanding the handle. You can do a lot of this stuff on a slack belt and stuff like that. I really prefer to hand sand it. It's actually one of the things that I like hand sanding is the handle. Blades, not so much, but the handle, I like hand sanding them quite a bit and contouring them, you know, with what feels comfortable as I'm profiling it, just the fine tuning sections. But we're going to be using a hard backer and a soft backer. This is hard foam, soft foam. And we're going to be doing 220 grit, then switching straight up to 500 grit, and then up to 800 grit after that. And we only need to really focus on the 800 for the scales itself. We're going to end up etching the spine, you know, the whole entire tang area. We're going to etch it all the way around and make it match the blade. So we're going to be doing that. But we are going to get this up to a pretty high finish on the handles ourselves so that when we buff them, they look really cool. So we're going to start working on. You won't see me do this very often, the whole stropping method, but I am going to do it on this just to kind of break this edge a little bit more. So now we're just wet sanding with 800 grit. So now we can go through and re-acid etch the tang there. You don't need to do it for long. It'll etch pretty quick. And the blade is stone washed, so it's not super dark where it's at. So I don't need to really darken this that much. So before we actually do the outro, we need to go ahead and put an edge on this knife. And we're going to be using the Pro Sharpening Supply little system that I have, but I'm only going to be using a 1000 grit belt and then the leather stropping belt. And that's all we're going to do to put the edge on this because I'd already ground it pretty fine. So I don't need to remove much material. And this 1000 grit will make quick work of that for us. Haven't done one of these in a while with the whole chopping test with the paper towel tube, so we'll see how this does. Say that was a success. So of course, it'll cut through a paper towel tube, it'll cut through paper, even little thin stuff like this. It does its job. I mean, it'll shave. I've already shaved with it a couple of times just to see how it would work, and I've already taken off like all of the hair that was right here, but to give you an idea about will it shave or not. Yep, I'd say it will. But guys, I know one of the things that y'all really want to see is the handle material. Now remember, this material is called Juma. I got it from Jantz. It's pretty awesome stuff. I think it really just works with the blade design, with the finishes on the blade, that acid etching with the tang and everything, and just a really cool looking, that color is just beautiful on there with the black pins. Really like that side because you get almost that lizard scale look to it. It's just a really cool looking set of scales on a really cool looking knife. Now remember, this knife was just a piece of steel that I practiced on a while back that didn't work out, and then it turned into this. So just because you put a knife away for a little while doesn't mean you shouldn't grab that thing back out and try and work on it again and maybe turn it into something awesome like that. Really cool. I'm really excited about this one, and I really want to know what y'all think about this. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think this was the right direction to go with the handle scales? Would you have done something different? I'm interested to see what y'all think. Now, guys, like I said, this material was from Jantz, the scales. They're not sponsoring this video. They're not a channel sponsor or anything like that. But I do want to let y'all know where I get this stuff just in case y'all want to scoop it up. So I'm going to leave a link for it in the description down below. That way you can click on it and just go check it out. Now guys, the one thing that is a channel sponsor is my website. You know, don't have sponsors and all that stuff. At least right now I don't. You know, I'll have people that'll help me out here and there with a few things, but nobody's helping me pay the bills. So if y'all would, go to the website, theriversexperience.com. That's my website. I've got my knives on there. I've got shirts on there. Ones like this right here, the logo, little baseball tee, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Go check it out, scoop you up some merch to help me recoup the cost that I'm about to spend on this shop expansion. Now, speaking of the expansion, guys, the next Shop Talk Tuesdays going forward are going to be based on that. Now, if I do have a week where it's going to be like pouring outside and I can't really work on the shop, I might just throw in some knife content right there. So you got a few things to look forward to. Plus, we still have the weekend videos and things like that. We are still going to be making knives during this process, but the focus is going to be more on the actual shop expansion, and hopefully y'all are excited about that. It starts next Shop Talk Tuesday, next week. Hopefully y'all are pumped for this. We'll see how it goes. Guys, if you would, give the video a thumbs up, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll catch y'all next time.